How we doing, Sixers Nation? NZ here, and today I want to break down two interesting paths the Sixers can take this offseason now that their cap space is freed up. All of the reports and buzz around this offseason clearly point to the 76ers prioritizing big names to complement Embiid and Maxey rather than filling out the roster with high-level rotational pieces. As much as fans can debate which approach is superior, it is clear which one the Sixers are taking. Daryl Morey is going to do everything in his power to land a star player in Philly, and we just have to accept it. The two stars in question go by the names of Paul George and Jimmy Butler, with each of them having uncertain futures regarding their next contract. The Clippers are currently unwilling to give PG the $200+ million contract extension, and so far have only offered him the same amount of money that Kawhi got for his contract extension at 3 years, $152 million. Paul George is most likely going to decline his player option for the 2025 season, making him an unrestricted free agent. Jimmy Butler, on the other hand, is still under contract for next season, but negotiations between his agency and the Miami Heat have increasingly become more interesting. So far, Pat Riley has seemed adamant on giving a max extension to the now 34-year-old Butler. It could very well be the case that Miami decides to head into another direction and try to get as much assets as possible for Jimmy. In a hypothetical, yet not unrealistic scenario, who would be the superior fit next to Embiid and Maxey? In this video, I'm going to compare the two and give my thoughts on who would be the better fit for the team going into next year. There are a lot of factors the Sixers would have to take into consideration when deciding among these players, so hopefully I can lay things out as clearly as possible.
Alright, so we're going to start off by comparing each player while analyzing their potential fit with the Sixers. At 34 years old, Paul George remains one of the elite 3-and-D wings in the NBA. He is well known throughout the league for having one of the smoothest 3-level scoring skill sets in the game. On the offensive side of the floor, he can do a bit of everything. He's capable of using his size to overpower small defenders and is not afraid to get physical when going to the rim. It's important to note that PG made a name for himself in the league as one of the most threatening slashers to go up against. Although he is not the athletic freak he was at age 23, he still shoots them at a respectable percentage on similar volume. PG is also a frequent user of the mid-range game, as he cracked the top 10 of total mid-range shots attempted this season while shooting a decent clip of 45%. Keep in mind that Tobias Harris shot 42% from mid-range despite having less than half of PG's attempts. I know that nobody would disagree that George is a significant upgrade from Tobias, but his scoring versatility isn't talked about enough when judging him as a potential fit. There are no players on the Sixers other than Embiid who could score consistently on multiple areas of the floor. Even Maxey's shot distribution is mostly made up of points in the paint and three-pointers. In the past, especially in the postseason, we have seen the Sixers become extremely stagnant on offense, and a portion of the reason why is because they were predictable. The lack of leveled-out scoring capabilities were often taken advantage of. Both James Harden and Maxey were similar in that they preferred to get their points from either the three-point line or the paint. With PG's higher comfort level and shooting in various spots, the offense will become more unpredictable. George could be a bailout type of guy who can make something out of nothing when the shot clock is almost over. This isn't even the most impactful part of his repertoire either. The main reason why George is so appealing to the Sixers is because of his off-ball shooting. Surrounding Joel Embiid with players that can swiftly and efficiently hoist three-pointers is crucial given the amount of attention he gets from the defense. This was highlighted against the Knicks, where Tobias Harris became the other team's best player due to him being a non-threat to catch and shoot. Both in the regular season and playoffs, Tobias shot poorly from three. His regular season catch-and-shoot three-point percentage was only 36.5, which is not good when compared to everyone else on the roster. It's about time the Sixers start getting actual value out of their large contracts, and PG can do just that. This season, he shot an excellent 45% off of catch-and-shoot threes on 4.4 attempts. Going from an absolute non-factor on the perimeter to one of the most efficient shooters in the league will make a humongous difference for the offense. George was top 5 this season in made three-pointers and has elite shooting mechanics. From watching and gathering film for the video, I immediately noticed that he has insane blinders. Even when a defender successfully recovers to contest a shot, he is completely unfazed. When given funky passes, he can still set up his smooth stroke. He has a solid pull-up game as well, especially when using a screen, and it could become even more dangerous if you have a guy like Joel Embiid setting him up.
Speaking of facilitating, Paul George is a capable distributor. He can make quick decisions at the top of the key, such as this play here when he gives a crisp pass to Norm Powell after noticing the defense refusing to switch the screen. Despite his age, he can still blow by defenders and find the open man when going downhill. He can make both fast and soft passes with great accuracy to wing and corner shooters. On occasion, he can even run a pick and roll, and that can add an interesting dynamic to the offense if the Sixers land him. Players like Kelly Oubre would thrive even more off of cutting, given PG's above-average court vision.
Although he is no longer considered a freak athlete, George is still an energetic defender that can help a team that desperately needs more perimeter pressure. On this play here, he does a fantastic job of showing his hands and sliding his feet against Paolo. He still has quick feet, and a lessened role in Philly would let him commit more to the defensive side of the floor. Jimmy Butler, like PG, is a Swiss Army knife that can impact multiple areas of the game. We saw this firsthand when he was wearing red, white, and blue. He's the ultimate glue guy that can provide leadership and grit to the team. He makes an impact on the game that goes beyond the box score. Whereas PG is more laid back, Jimmy is going to bring a different type of intensity. If there is one area of the game where he has PG beat, it has to be playmaking. Don't get me wrong, George is a good passer, but Jimmy is more of an overall facilitator, capable of averaging 7 assists in a season. Butler barely messes up passes and can easily find the open man when crowded by the defense or in posting up or blowing by a defender one-on-one. Plus, he already has chemistry with Joel Embiid, and he will feel right at home having guys like Maxey and Buddy Hield, if he does come back, having similar skill sets to Hero and Duncan Robinson. The Miami Heat have been known to get the best out of unknown players, and Jimmy should get some credit for that. Despite not being a prolific scorer, he still garners a lot of attention from the defense and makes smart decisions with the basketball.
Defensively, I would give Jimmy the edge due to his physicality and toughness when sizing up the ball handler, along with his IQ in the passing lanes. Jimmy is more of a communicator on that end and helped establish the stingy and suffocating defense that helped Miami go deep into the playoffs. This is when Jimmy's advantages end, though, as he's just not the perfect offensive fit that PG is. Butler is more of an interior scorer than Paul George, and his catch and shoot and pull-up numbers pale in comparison. The Sixers have needed a versatile bucket getter for years now, and having Jimmy try to mesh with potential re-signings like Kelly Oubre would be a lot more of an awkward fit than with PG. Granted, you could just add more shooting to the roster, but the rest of the Sixers' moves are not set in stone, and I am prioritizing fit above all else. Now, you'll probably counter my take by informing me about how Jimmy rises in the playoffs and how he can carry a team through the postseason, which is something the Sixers have never had since he was on the team. Then you would point out to Paul George's less than stellar playoff outings. Although I cannot deny that Jimmy has greatly outperformed George in recent memory, it's the randomness of the playoffs and the circumstances within the scenario that make the postseason less impactful for my decision making than it would be for other fans. Narratives in the NBA can change quickly. A guy known for being an underperformer one day can very well be next week's hero. My point is that just because a player has a reputation for falling in the playoffs does not mean that that stigma cannot go away. A player's legacy in the playoffs is set in stone the day he retires. In no way am I denying Jimmy's impact in the postseason, but there's legitimate concern for whether he can keep up that sort of production. Paul George gets harped on for being injury prone, but it's not like Jimmy is any more durable. PG did miss 20 less games than Jimmy over the last 3 seasons, but recent events have led me to believe that George is the more stable option. This season, George played 74 games, the highest it has been since the 2019 season, where he played 77. Jimmy, in comparison, has yet to have a 70-plus game season in Miami and is coming off a sprained MCL. It makes sense to label both players as injury-prone, but at this point in time, PG seems to be in better health. Jimmy isn't getting any younger either. You also have to consider the way to actually get one of these guys on the team. George can just be brought in, whereas with Jimmy you have to go through the stubborn Miami front office by working out a trade. The Sixers have 5 first-round picks to trade, and having to expend assets for an older star may not be the best decision. George is old as well, but at least you get to keep your assets and use them towards roster construction or use them for a rebuild. All in all, if I was Morey, I would rather prioritize depth than forming another big 3. But that isn't going to happen unless he strikes out on PG and Butler, and in that case, I would prefer Paul George. He's the perfect fit next to Embiid and Maxey and would not have to carry the team on his back like he had to in LA. Anyways, those are just my thoughts, and the offseason will be here in no time. This is going to be one of the most important offseasons in Sixers history, and it will be interesting to see what the front office does. If you stuck around for the end, please consider liking the video and subscribing. And for now, peace.